Thank you for the introduction. I've been the Chief Education Evangelist at Google for the past 14 years. I launched Google Apps for Education into the university space, launched Google Apps in the K-12. Then my really crazy idea at Google was launching Chromebooks into education. And today we have 100 million users, students using these tools around the world. We have millions of Chromebooks in education right now, and it's great to see these tools being utilized while we're all going through this. So my job at Google has always been to work across all the different teams that are doing things in education, and that effort has grown in 14 years from when it was just me and another person to now hundreds of people and hundreds of people working on education stuff, right? Like I used to say, Google will never build a product that's specific to education, and then they made me Zach made me look back when they released Google Classroom, right? So our education effort continues to grow. I've become a lot less useful there, and so I get to some time to do these types of things. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of what I'm seeing, where I'm headed. Oh, I should also give you a little bit of background, because why I like having these conversations is I'm a first-generation American. I was born and raised in Hell's Kitchen, New York. Not the Hell's Kitchen, New York that you go to now. Well, you can't go to it now, but when you used to be able to go, which was great with all the condos and restaurants. I'm talking about the Hell's Kitchen from the 70s and 80s, right? When it wasn't a great place. When, if you ever watched the movie Escape from New York, that Kurt Russell movie, you watch that movie, you're like, yeah, that absolutely is what New York's gonna look like, right? That New York. And I grew up with a single mother. I grew up on welfare and food stamps in a very violent community. And I would argue that there's two things that have given me the ability to talk to you guys, right? Number one is education, right? A recognition that education was critical, that I saw people who were successful, and I saw education as that common denominator. And that was one. And the other thing that I've always been grateful for, and financially also grateful for, is the role that an after-school program played for me, right? So I was part of the PAL network, and I went into PAL not knowing, just one of those, hey, troublemaker, you're going to start going to PAL, to going every single day, to learning how to play basketball, to becoming captain of the high school basketball team in New York, which, if you know anything about New York sports, it's a big deal. And all that, and the relationships I build, and the community I built there at PAL is one of the main reason why I'm here. I'm here today. So I think that it's important to kind of highlight that, especially for this group, as to why I think these programs make sense now and why they're important. So that's my background. And I think that the most important thing that I've noticed over the last couple months, and this comes from a video I posted on my YouTube channel, I don't know, a month or two ago. Maybe it was 2 years ago. I don't know. Every time we sit down at dinner, the joke I start with is, how's everyone's Thursday? Doesn't matter what day it is. It's just, how's everyone's Thursday? Because I don't know what day it is. I don't know what day it is right now. I don't even know what month it is. But a couple of months ago, it feels like, I posted a video on YouTube channel about, it was an offer for educators. Like, hey, I know you're meeting with your students in video format. If you want me to come in and talk to your students, I'd love to do that. Just hit me up. I thought maybe 10 people would respond. I got hundreds and hundreds of requests that kind of booked up my schedule for until, like, I just did 2 today. But what I got out of that act was I got a chance to see what's happening out there. I got a chance to understand what teachers are experiencing. I got, not just here in the US, but across the world. Last week or 2 weeks ago, again, don't know what the date is, I did a session in Ethiopia and Kazakhstan at the same time. And so I got a chance to visit different classes all over the world and students from all over the world. And the questions that they have are very similar. The concepts that they bring up are very much the same. So I got a chance to see all that. And in doing all this, kind of the lesson that I learned, or the thing that I'm pulling out, is that we have to understand that we are now entering a digitalized economy, that's where we are now. It has nothing to do with the pandemic. We were going in this direction no matter what. And by digitalization, I mean everything. I mean artificial intelligence, machine learning, AR, VR, automation, robotics, the whole package, all of that. Every state, every industry, every country, every business, everyone is trying to figure out what digitalization is going to be in the future. How is it going to be part of their business? How is it going to be part of their government services? How is it going to be part of any of the solutions that they build for any problems that they face, right? That's part of that. And what we need to understand is that our students need to understand computer science. Now, I'm not saying, and I'll be very clear here, I'm not saying the kids need to learn how to code. That's not what I'm saying. Because ironically, coding is going to be obsolete in a couple of years because machines are going to be able to program themselves. What I'm saying is that they need to understand computer science. And if they learn a language through that process, great. But they need to understand computational thinking, design principles, engineering principles. They need to understand how this stuff works, because everything is going to have a digitalized angle on it. And what we need to understand is that our students need to know how that stuff works and why it works and what you can do with it, no matter what kinds of solutions they end up building. As an example, I'm broadcasting here, and I keep losing my lights, but I'm broadcasting here from Phoenix, Arizona. And if the problem that I wanted to solve was to get me to the airport, the Phoenix airport. But as I'm thinking about the solutions to get me to the airport, I don't know that cars exist, right? And if I don't know that cars exist, what kinds of solutions would I come up with to get me to the airport? I could create a really good scenario or solution about how long it would take me to walk there and how much I would walk and whether or not I would, what the pace would be. I could come up with great mathematical formulas of walking to the airport. But if I don't know that cars exist, am I going to come up with the best solution? And that's where we are with digitalization. And no matter what the solution is, digitalization is going to be part of that solution, no matter what business model you want to talk about. And so understanding how this stuff works is important. And I think we've given students a pass when it comes to digitalization. I honestly think we've been lying to them, right? We call them digital natives. We say, oh, you were born with technology. You know, hey, 8-year-old, come over here, help me set up my VCR, right? Like we tell them, we just think they know how to use these tools. And they don't, right? We look at evidence, they don't. I would encourage everyone to go look at the Stanford study on digitalization from a couple of years, one from 2016, one from last year, where clearly you can see that students don't know how to use these tools. 82% of elementary school kids can't tell you the difference between a sponsored website and a real news site. 80% of high school kids can't point out a fake story in a group of 5 stories, right? 4 out of 5 students in the study that Stanford did got 0 correct in the assessment that they did, right? Like they don't know how to use these tools. And for some reason, we have told them that they do. And so I think one of the most important things that we can do is even from the base level of how do you turn on a computer all the way through what quantum computing is, we need to start helping our students to understand how this stuff works. Not just searching, not just finding information, but also how all of it works together. Because we are at the very, 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 very beginning of this, right? It feels like we're deep into it, but we're not even close, right? So I'll give you an example of what I mean. Google recently announced, again, I don't know how long ago, months ago, could have been 5 years ago, recently announced that we had a breakthrough in quantum computing. Now, I see people's eyeballs rolling. I'm not going to explain quantum computing, but I'll say this. The breakthrough was this. If you take one of those equations, that take that process over and over. If you gave that equation to the world's most powerful supercomputer, it would take that computer, that supercomputer, the world's most powerful computer, it would take that supercomputer, just one computer, 10,000 years to walk through that equation, to walk through the process of that. The breakthrough that we had in quantum computing is that we can now do it in 300 seconds. 10,000 years versus 300 seconds. And obviously that's not on a MacBook Pro, right? That's on in a gazillion room server space that, that goes on forever. But one day it will be a MacBook Pro. And so you have to ask yourself, 10,000 years versus 300 seconds, what are we going to be building when we get closer to that 300-second mark? We're talking Star Trek stuff here, right? NASA just announced a couple days ago that they found evidence of a parallel universe. Like, we know nothing about what's happening right now, right? We are at the very, very beginning of this. And so our students need to understand how these things work. We need to teach them. So I think one of the greatest things that we can do in an after-school world is help them build those skills. Help them build those digital skills. Help them learn how to vet information, how to look for information. Have them learn how a computer works, or technology works. Like, this is not something that we have to wait for them to be a certain age. My 5-year-old, if I put my 5-year-old in front of you right now, she will tell you exactly how megabytes go from this laptop to you. She'll tell you. She'll show you the wire. She'll show you what a fiber cable is. She'll show you why light is better and faster than a coaxial cable, right? Like, they can learn this at 5 years old. And so teaching them how these things work is absolutely critical. So that, to me, is one of the spaces that we can focus on. Now, the other thing that I'll highlight, and again, after this, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have, is this idea of the skills that they need to build, right? We've been talking about this list for a long time, but in this world, they've become more important. Because think about digitalization and put yourself in the position of a business owner. If you think about what your business is going through, and whether you're a CEO of an 800,000 person organization or a small business owner, what is your number one risk to your business? Your number one risk to your business, believe it or not, and this is not sounding callous, is people. Humans are the number one risk to your thing. Because humans doing process work, I should say, right? Because if you have humans doing process work and they can't do that process because they can't be in the factory, or they can't be in the store, or they can't be doing the thing, then your business suffers. So what you're going to try to do as a business owner, a smart business owner, is to minimize that risk. And so you're going to focus even more on automation and robotics and machine learning and artificial intelligence. You're going to even go harder on that. And we can see it happening already, right? In the same sentence that we call grocery store workers essential workers, we're also replacing them, right? We call them essential workers, and in Singapore, just 2 days ago, they released a new supermarket chain, released a supermarket process where there are no people checking you out. It's just you're doing it yourself now. And they created a system. It's not just self-service checkout. It's just complete. You check in, get what you want, and check out. So that's how much this is going to happen. Innovation, automation, robotics was on a curve moving up already. I think it's going to have a hockey stick growth. And if that's true, then what we need to do is focus on the most important skills that our students need and ask ourselves, are the things that we're teaching our students, can they be done by a machine? And if they can be done by a machine, we should probably not be teaching them that. And so those human skills become absolutely critical. Problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, the ability to learn, the creativity, those things become absolutely critical to learn. And we've been talking about this list for so long, we call them 21st century skills, without thinking about the fact that we are 20 years into the 21st century, that we call them 21st century skills because it makes us feel better. Because when we talk about them, they're the skills for the future. Oh, don't worry. Right now we're gonna teach you. We're gonna make you memorize things. But these other skills, you're gonna need those for the future. So you better learn them at some point when we're 20 years into the 21st century. Those skills are needed right now. If you want to trigger me, call them soft skills. They're not soft skills. They are essential, absolute skills. And even more so in a machine-driven world, those skills become more important. And I would think that out of those skills, we've always said that all of them are important, and they are, but one of them has kind of risen to the top, and that is the ability to learn. And what I see is that we don't do a very good job teaching our kids how to learn. And I think in after school programs, we can do a much better job, or we can take this on as to how do we teach our students how to learn, right? Not how to study, not how to do homework, not how to take a test, but actually how to learn. It's a self-awareness. It starts with this idea that I don't know how to do something. I need to know where to know how to do it. And then I need to know whether I learned how to do it or not, right? Often hear adults say things like, and it's a mind shift. It's nothing physical. It's in your head, right? Like I hear adults say all the time, oh, I'm not very creative. Or I hear adults even say, oh, you know what, this new technology stuff, I'm not good with that Zoom. I'm not technology savvy, right? You hear that all the time. And my response usually upsets people. This is why I don't have a lot of friends. But my response is, no, you've chosen not to be creative. You've chosen not to be good at technology. Everything that you need to be good at these things is there. Everything that you need to learn is there. It's a choice that you've made, whether you realize it or not. And so with our students, they should never be able to say, I'm not good at math. They should say, I need to learn math. Or how can I learn math? Or where do I go and learn math? And if they can do it that way, if they think that way, then you can teach them anything because they understand that they can learn anything. And then they can figure out whether or not they've learned it or not, right? So, when I launched my YouTube channel a year ago, I knew zero about videography. Absolutely. I mean, when I say zero, I'm a photographer. I didn't even know my camera had a record button on it, right? That's how zero I'm talking about. Knew nothing about videography, knew nothing about editing video, zero. And I have a 27-year-old, I have a 27-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 5-year-old. Yeah, I thought I was smart, that I would have one at a time, and that's the way I would do it. And it's all backfired on me now because they are literally all in the house right now, driving me insane. But that's a personal problem. I won't bear that on you. But my 27-year-old, I went to her when I said, hey, I want to start a YouTube channel. She has a degree in film. She's an editor. She's a video producer. She works at CNN from here now. She was in New York. She works for CNN. She makes fake news. And I said to her, I want to start my YouTube channel. And after she laughed for 10 minutes, I said, where do I start? What do I need to know? And she said, okay, start here. Write this down. You don't need to shoot in 4K. Your file sizes get too big. Shoot at 1080p. Shoot at 24 frames per second, which means you need to double your shutter speed to 50 frames per second. And you want to try to keep your ISO at about 100 because you don't want to introduce noise and grain into your videos. And so if you go outside and you keep those settings, you're going to blow out your exposure. So you don't want to lower your aperture too much because you're going to get rid of the bokeh. So what you want to be able to do is put a variable ND filter on it so that you can change the light. And I said, cool, thank you. That was very helpful. Okay, so here's my next question. What the hell do any of those words mean, right? Like that's literally where I started. And now I can have a debate with a Sony rep as to why 10-bit is better external than 12-bit is internal, whether 100 megabyte recording speed is worse than a 60 megabyte on a Sony DSLR camera, right? Like I can have those debates with you because I've learned how to do these things. And so learning that you don't know how to do something is important. And then learning where to learn how to learn it is important. And then learning whether you've learned it or not is important, right? And so for me, I can do an assessment as to whether or not I can talk to a person and know whether or not I've learned these things. If you go back and all of you are going to subscribe to my YouTube channel, right? I go and watch my YouTube. I watched the first video and it looks like a hostage video, right? Like that, it looks like I'm asking someone to send me money and compared to the video that I just made, right? So that's my assessment. But that idea of I don't know how to learn, where can I learn how to do it is essential. Like another trigger word or phrase for me is when people say, oh, just fake it till you make it. No, don't do that. Like, don't come work for me and fake it. Like, how am I ever going to teach you? How am I ever going to guide you if I don't know you know how to do something? Like, don't fake it, right? Like, oh, okay, pilot, yeah, I know you don't know how to fly an airplane. Fake it till you make it, right? Like it doesn't make any sense to me. So don't fake it till you make it. Say you don't know how to do something and be open to learning it, right? And so it's the culture shift. And I think in after school programs, if we focused on just those two areas, right? These digital skills that they critically need and teaching them how to learn, it will change the world. So I'll pause there for now. And I don't even know what time it is or what day it is, but I'll answer any questions that you guys might have.
So Jamie, there was a question when you were talking about just all of everything going to automated, when you're talking about the grocery store and things that are coming down the pike. And the question was, how does this transfer to jobs for people? And then you kind of talked about it with the essential skills, but that was the question.
Yeah, and that's a good question, because what you got to do is look at history, right? And we have to understand that change happens gradually and we never notice it. And then it happens suddenly and then we notice it. And what we need to understand is that we now live in suddenly times, right? Because this change of automation and robotics has been happening for a very long time. And I didn't even realize it until I did my research on this, right? So the first time I showed up to work 25 years ago for my first job, there was an automation tool on my desk. It was this dummy thing, this dummy terminal that did this magical thing called send an email. And if I wanted to send you a message, I would sit there, type it up, 5 seconds later, you'd have that message. If I wanted to do the same thing, the same process 10 years before that, I would have to write it up on a piece of paper, on a legal pad, hand it to what we used to call typing pools, people sitting around with typewriters. They would eventually get to it, type it up, give it back to me in a folder, in a little folder, and I'd look at it, make my red mark edits to it, and hand it back, and we'd go back and forth. Eventually it'd be done, then I would sign it, and then we would put it in an envelope and mail it to you. That 2-week process was now happening in 5 seconds. And in between that, there was faxing and those things, that other automation tools that happened. So I don't remember anyone complaining about typists losing their jobs. I'm sure they did, but I don't remember it. And I don't remember anyone the first time you drove your car to work ever complaining about stagecoach drivers losing their jobs, right? Like this has been happening for a long time. It's just happening faster now. And we've been here before, right? When's the last time one of you, especially given the time that we're in now, when was the last time one of you walked into a bank and, filled out one of those little pieces of paper and went to the front of the line to the teller and slipped the piece of paper and said, I would like $20 in cash, please. When was the last time you did that? I think the bank teller would pick it up and be like, I'm sorry, is this a bank robbery? I really don't know what's going on here, right? Because you would use the ATM machine if you would have any cash at all. Yet, when ATMs first came out in the 70s, all the rave was that's it. The banking industry is done. Everyone who works in banking is going to lose their job. There are no more banking jobs. And then when we look at it now, there are more people working in the banking industry than there was when ATMs were introduced. And technology is huge. There's things about technology in the banking industry about microtransactions and stock options and where you put servers next to copper wire so that you can get the fastest microsecond transaction. Technology is finance. And there are more people working in banking than there was when ATMs were introduced. There's actually more people working in banks than there were when ATMs were introduced. It's not that the jobs went away, it's that the jobs changed. And so using a supermarket example is that, technically speaking, people are losing their jobs, but other things are being created in the meantime, right? And so, for example, if you think about the supermarket, if I'm a supermarket owner and I don't have to hire 20 people to do process work, which is basically I take your cans, I scan them, and I put them in a bag for you, right? That process job, you can do that, right? You do it now. You did it before the pandemic, right? With self-service checkout. My 5-year-old does that job. That's her job. Her job in every store that we used to go into in the olden days was to do self-service. She did the self-service checkout. She did it. I always try to teach her how to scan just one thing, but put two things in a bag, but she won't do that. But that's her job. And when that job gets converted into where not just self-service, but where I just have to check myself in, like the Amazon store, where I just take what I want and I put it in my bag and walk out of the store, I don't have to hire 20 people to do process work. Then the key question becomes, do I have to hire people at all? And the answer is yes, because if I'm a supermarket owner, I'm going to hire different workers, not process workers. I'm going to hire dietitians. I'm going to hire nutritionists. I'm going to hire cooks. So when you walk into my grocery store, instead of never being able to find anyone that can help you find anything, or having you walk into that store with that same list of things, of groceries, the same crap that you've been buying for 10 years, 20 years, that you make the same dishes, when you walk into my grocery store, you're going to be greeted by a nutritionist asking you what your nutritional strategy this week is, asking you what your diet plan is, saying, oh, you want to make lasagna, but every time you try it, it burns down the kitchen. Come over here. Let's walk over to my demo station. I'll show you how to do that so that doesn't happen. I have to hire higher skilled workers to do that, and I'm going to make a lot more money than with the process workers I had before, right? That's happening across all industries. And so it's not so much that jobs are taken away, it's that pieces of jobs have always been taken away. And so it's not about humans versus machines and some kind of Terminator thing. It's about humans and machines working together. And that's always been true. And it's just happening faster and faster now.
Great. Thanks, Jaime. So there's another couple of questions in the chat box. One, would you say that this framework puts the quote self in control, with us having the power to make decisions to grow and develop?
Yeah, I mean, I got to try to separate the things that are my personality versus the things that are real, right? Because I'm a control freak, right? I'm such a control freak. I don't even trust my car, right? I drive a manual stick car. I don't even trust the transmission of a car. Like I drive myself, right? I don't need, thank you, car. I can handle the shifting. Appreciate it, right? Like I'm a control freak. So I want to control everything in my life. But when students come to me and they say, hey, how do I get a job at Google? My response is, don't get a job at Google, start Google, right? We live in a long tail economy now. You can start a niche in anything that you're passionate about right now, even during the pandemic. Like 9% of people between the ages of 13 and 21 make a full-time living online, right? If you can start so I'm and I hate to admit this publicly, but I will. I am obsessed by flat earthers. So no offense to anyone who's a flat earther, do your thing. But I am obsessed by flat earthers. I love them so much. I love the arguments. I love watching illogical arguments be built as logical arguments, right? So just something about that I love. So I watch their videos. I know who they are. Now, imagine I am a young person and I am an amazing t-shirt designer. Like I just got the skill of making these like badass t-shirts. Imagine I made 4 flat earth t-shirts, like limited time run of these beautiful, well-designed flat earth t-shirts. I know exactly where they are. I know where to market them. I know where to sell them. I know I can easily make $50,000, $60,000 a year selling flat earth t-shirts. I don't recommend it to anyone, but there's 6 million of them, right? Like this idea that we live in this niche economy where you can find something. You like baseball cards? There's a whole baseball card market out there. You like drones? There's a whole drone market out there. You like to fly drones? There's a whole stock photography world about buying drone footage out there. There's a niche for everything. And that's different than it was for us, because when we were young and we wanted to start our own business, it was hard, right? Like if we wanted to start a store, for example, we'd have to find a storefront and pay lease and rent and get shelving and inventory. And then we would have to go in the community and figure out what everybody wants and put it into the store and hire people and have hours of operation. Any kid with a laptop can start a job. So I think that if you take on that self-awareness around learning, then the same thing will happen around your business. And by the way, this next generation is already there, right? 70% of Generation Z doesn't want to work for you at all. And that was before the pandemic. right? I like what they're watching now. They're not going to trust you guys at all, right? They're gonna do their own thing, and so I see that happening more and more.
All right, thanks. So next question, Jamie. Take take a breath, take a drink. So the question was, if you go back through your definition of essential skills, started with problem solving, critical thinking. Obviously, you talked about the ability to learn.
Yeah.
What would you put in that category of those essential skills?
Yeah. So I think you can call them. I would call them human skills. Anything that's human based, right? So empathy, the ability to learn, as we talked about, problem solving, collaboration, critical thinking. I mean, and I tend to just focus on those five, right? Problem solving, collaboration, which is how the world gets run, the ability to learn, creativity, and I'm missing one. Oh, now I'm like Rick Perry. So problem solving, collaboration, critical thinking, the ability to learn, creativity, right? So those are the five that I focus on. Now, you can take some of the other ones, like you can take digital skills and fit it under critical thinking for me. You can take communication skills and fit it under creativity for me, because creativity is how you tell stories and how you get information out, right? And you have to come up with creative ways. You can't just present, you have to come up with unique ways to present. And this generation already has that. We're just not taking advantage of that. Like, for example, I don't know how many of you would admit, I'd actually like to see, for those that can see video, like how many of you have and watch TikTok videos? Right. Right. So there's people that are going down like this. And okay. So go just spend an hour watching TikTok videos if you never have. Once you get past the stupidity of it, for the most part, what you'll see is the real thing, which is storytelling, creativity, messages. You'll start seeing like the beauty of the creativity of these kids have of building a thing. Like I watch some of those like domino videos, and I think about the fact that these kids spend 8, 10, 12 hours to set something up that they're going to show you in 60 seconds. That's just brilliant, right? And so the ability to be creative is already there. How do we take advantage of it, as opposed to saying, I don't understand that TikTok thing. I don't know why you watch that. That's stupid, right? Like that, it's out there. So let's use it. And so I think those are the most critical things that we can focus on for human skills. And that's what complements the machine skills. Because you have to understand, like one of the funniest terms for me is artificial intelligence, right? Like that, I giggle every time I hear the word artificial intelligence, because there's nothing intelligent about it, right? Like compared to what we consider intelligence, right? If we think about the human brain as intelligent, like an average human brain, right? Like my 19-year-old, don't tell him I said so. But if you think about just the average brain, and then you think about the world's most powerful artificial intelligent thing, you're literally talking about a scale of like 1 to 100,000, right? Like you're literally nowhere close to artificial intelligence. Like artificial intelligence is not even remotely close to human intelligence. Yeah, you can feed it a lot of information and it'll tell you what happened on December 7th, 1941, but it won't tell you why, right? Like that is intelligence. And so the idea that we think that machines are going to take over these human capacities and capabilities is just not going to happen for a very long time, I hope, but it's just not going to happen. And so how do we focus on those human skills to complement the machine skills? Because the way we should be looking at machines is, how do they take over the boring parts of our job? How do they take over the bad parts of our job? How do they take over the parts of our jobs that waste our time or that we shouldn't have to do because it's processed over and over and over again, right? Like if you do the same thing every day over and over and over, and you do it for 20 years, you have to ask yourself, do you have 20 years experience, or do you have 1 year of experience 20 times, right? And so machines can help us with that and get that away. Like who wouldn't, if you told me that there's a machine that can cut my lawn for me and I don't have to cut it, like, yes, please, right? Yeah, like we just ordered Roombas, right? Because I don't want to vacuum anymore, right? Like, so these machines can help us take over parts of our jobs that we don't want to do or waste our time. We're not human. And so let's focus on the human stuff.
Great, thank you. So Cruz asked, what about the digital divide?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think that for those of us that have been in the equity space for the last 10, 15 years, we've been talking about equity in education. We've been talking about access issue. We've been talking about digital divide. And the progress we've made has been like this, right? And I think now everyone can see it. There's a clear indication of the fact that we do have a digital divide. We do have access issues. We do have technology gaps that we need to fill. I mean, I don't care what your politics is, but even when the president said we need to focus on infrastructure, and the first thing he brought up was broadband, that means that we're starting to get some of this, right? Like that wouldn't have come up 3 months ago, right? And so we're starting to recognize that it's an issue. So I hope we take advantage of it. We're responsible if we don't. And I think everyone has enough attention on it now that everyone, whether you are in education or not, can clearly see the gaps that we have when it comes to equity and how we need to close those. And that's just on the technology side, right? There's equity gaps in how, health services. There's equity gaps in mental health, right? There's, like we have equality in education, right? 2 kids come into school at the same time and we try to treat them the same, right? That's equality. And we both give them a C, right? They both get the same kind of grade for their effort on their paper. But one kid came in, with a kiss on her forehead by her parents and with her kale salad, and another one just witnessed the shooting, right? Like those are not the same kids. And so understanding that there's an equity issue in that, and that we need to bring services to those students so that they can get to the point where we can do equality is absolutely critical.
Yeah, it's good stuff. No more questions in the chat box. Y'all keep those coming. If somebody has a question, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, we'll take that risk with 165 of us. Anyone?
All right. Well, thank you guys.
I think we'll say this real quick, Jamie. There's a lot of compliments and a lot of folks that are saying, hey, can we see this again? I think the process right now, you're throwing so much amazing stuff out there for us to think about and process. And then I guess that's what I would say, is it may not be a ton of questions right now, but I think people are just processing all that you're saying. And how do we take your inspiration and inspire our students with this, with this information and with this inspiration that you're giving to us? And so I think that's where this is coming from. I just want to say this is awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I, one of the things I talk to students about all the time is this idea of learning, right? And the fact that they've been told, our students, us too, that learning is a process, right? Learning is something that happens to you. You are in education, you guys are educators, but it's not, it's a mindset, right? Education is a mindset. It's everlasting, it's long life. And this idea that, we think of, like, you think you can separate learners from others. We're all learners. Everyone is a learner, right? And so it's a mindset that we're learners. And when I talk to students, I'm like, look, here's the problem that you have, that the science will tell us this, that if you sat somewhere and learned for 15 hours in a day and then went to bed for 8 hours, the next day, guess what? You can learn for 15 hours all over again. There's no tank. You don't have a tank. And if you can convince students of that what they're suffering isn't the ability to learn, but the regressive deadlines and stereotypes that we put on our students. For example, it might take you 10 minutes to learn fractions. It might take me 10 years. But that's just that time is just a factor. That's not You've chosen that factor. You've told me that I need to learn it in 6 weeks, but if I learn it in 6 years, who cares? I can learn it in 6 years. There's other things I can learn in 6 minutes. And so this idea that you can constantly learn and constantly grow is something that our students need to hear, that it's not, you got an F in something, therefore it's the end, right? That's the problem with grades. That's a problem. That's the problem with grade levels, is that these are endpoints. There is no endpoint, right? And so trying to convince students of that has been my work for the most part. So I appreciate the time. I've lost my voice today. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, you got a question?
Hi, yeah. For a person that was born in 1960, right? I just turned 60 years old. So yeah, technology is kind of scary for me. And so when we talk about teaching our children, I'm thinking, I need to learn it because I can't teach what I don't know, right?
Yeah.
And so when I use my 12-year-old granddaughter that helps me with all my technology, you know, and I got to get to the point though that, you know, this is something that I just have to do. Like you were saying, you just got to get out there. I can learn it. I just have to want to. I have to thirst for it.
Yeah. No, I
don't know, but now we're living in a time where if I'm going to keep working, I have to know it.
Right. No, you know, I used to always be, and I'm 52, so I'm not that far off. And there's not a technology I don't know how to use. Not because I'm smarter than you, but because I like to learn it, right? Like tomorrow, I mentioned I'm a photographer. Yesterday, for 2 hours, I learned, oops, somebody got to go on mute. I learned how to, what's called drag and burn on Photoshop. I've never used Photoshop before, but I learned how to do that on Photoshop. And it was scary, and I got it wrong, and I was frustrated, and I didn't know. And then I ordered a tablet pen where you can do drawing right on a tablet, and I don't know how to use one right now, but I'm getting it tomorrow. And I bet you by the end of the day, I will know that much more, right? And even before this whole technology world happened, I was always the tech director for people. I was always the tech support, right? When grandma got the VCR, I would set it up. When the cable company came and brought everything, I would set up the speakers or whatever it was. I was always the tech. And people were like, how do you know how to, this is before the internet. People were like, how do you know how to do this stuff? And I'm like, all right, here's the secret, but don't tell anybody. I read the user manual, right? Like literally that was my secret, right? And so that's how you learn. What is the user manual? And it's out there. And here's the great thing about the internet is, if you're afraid of technology, is that there is so much information for really advanced people and for people who don't know how to work a pen. And there's everything in between. And your job is to find the right kind of information that makes sense for where you're comfortable.
So Jamie, this popped up in the chat box too.
Okay.
With menial tasks being given to machines and humans looking for more, quote, human skills, would you argue that the arts are becoming more important as technology develops?
Absolutely, right? Like I absolutely, like I think that the two things I've been screaming about for a decade is, you know, one, I see librarians being cut from schools, and that's just insane to me. That's probably the most important role you can have in the school, is the person who can teach you how to find things and learn. And arts, because that's where creativity comes from. That's where art comes from. And even in college, I see these battles all the time, which is, you know, the STEM technology versus the arts and humanity, as it's, again, a battle between both. And I'm like, no, it's not a battle. It's both at the same time. It's learning both, right? And so we have to be able to teach arts. And if you go to did I post this on Twitter? If you go to my Twitter feed a couple weeks ago, I think I posted this. If I haven't, I will. My daughter taught herself how to do Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on an iPad on GarageBand. Never took a lesson. Just learned how to do it by herself. And the mind work that goes into that. And at the end of the video, she's like, "I want a real one now," right? Like that art thing has to be part of our lives, because you're creating things, right? And creativity is one of the skills. And if your creativity is, you got to create things, right? You can't be creative without creating things. And so it becomes even more important to focus on those things. My kid, you know, this idea, like, again, it's this mental game that we got to play where, you know, like if I walk into my house and my 5-year-old is drawing on a piece of paper, is she learning? Hell yeah, she's learning, right? Like that's the point. Like we got to stop separating like, oh no, learning is only in the workbook. I don't use workbooks with my kid. Like my kid knows math. I never once pull out a workbook. I teach her that math isn't everything, right? That math is just part of life. That math formulas is literally in everything that's alive and everything that's not alive. There's math involved. And if you can learn that, then you can learn how stuff works. And so that's the concept that we need to kind of bring our students.
All right, we'll do, how about we do 2 more?
Okay.
That work? You good?
Yeah.
Right.
I know my wife appreciates this because by the time I get in the house, I'm not going to be able to talk and she likes it that way.
All right, we'll keep you going then. So one of the questions was, how do you increase technology access in our communities? Whether that's through policy, how do we do that?
Vote, number 1. Organize, number 2. Vote and organize, number 3. But part of it is also understanding that this is a temporary problem, right? In the macro things. The fact that, you know, when I started at Google, there was 14% of the world was online, right? And what most people don't understand or realize is that today, even today, with all this technology, only 50% of the world is online. Only 50%. So we're still at the beginning of this, and that these communities that don't have internet access, either if it's a policy issue, then we should be able to solve that right away, right? Like if in urban areas there's no technology there, that's us. That's a problem that we have with policy. In rural areas where there's no technology, and you know, there's many places, I live in Arizona, there's places out there that don't have access. That becomes a temporary problem only because the current solution to bring fiber out to those communities won't work. It's too much. It's like by the time, if you start digging a line out to the Indian reservation, by the time you got there 10 years later, we'll have more different technology that's going to do it better and faster anyway. So it's this temporary thing that we got to get through. But in the meantime, if the access is there, then we have to make sure our leaders understand that this is an important topic for us, an important issue.
All right, thanks. So we'll do 1 more question. So this question was maybe a little more personal, but how did you get into this field? What drives you to do what you do?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, you know, so the problem I'm trying to solve is this. It's a simple problem. You would think it's simple. The problem I'm trying to solve is that in my professional world, in my life, 14 years at Google in education and technology, 7 years at Accenture, worked at Charles Schwab. I worked for Governor Cuomo for 2 years. I've done well in my career in terms of the roles that I've had. And in that entire lifespan of my roles, I've never really met anyone at my level with my background, right? And so I can make one of 2 assumptions: that I am where I am today and I have the influence and the power that I have because I'm a super genius and I have a 500 IQ, and that's what my wife thinks I think. Or there are millions of students who are just like me with the same capacity and the same capabilities that for some reason, because of access, because of opportunity, but because of luck, aren't in these positions of influence and power. And I think that that's probably more true than the first thing. And so what the problem that I'm trying to solve is to bring more me's into these powerful positions. I'm not talking about, there's lots of work on getting people like me into jobs. That's not what I'm focused on. I'm getting into influence and power, and that's where things change. And so to get more people like me to do that. And when I talk to students who are growing up like I grew up, I remind them, the African American market, the market is $1 trillion market. The Latino market is $1 trillion market. Who's building products and services for those markets? Right? Like the opportunity is there. The angles are there. The technology is there. Now it's a matter of choice and will and how much investment we make into our communities.
Wow, I just want to say preach.
Yeah.
That's where the title comes from. All right, you guys, thank you very much for having me. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, please. My wife and I have a bet that I will never get to 1 million subscribers, and my reality distortion field tells me I will. So make sure you subscribe and hit the notification button and share it. It's a bunch of advice. It's lessons learned. It's a lot of the things that we talked about here that I'm going to be building as videos on my channel. The last one I just posted, and I try to do it in a fun way. And sometimes while I'm traveling, I'll shoot my videos. And the last one I just posted was how to do better video calls, right? Like, so how do you make your videos look like this and sound like this? And so you should go check that out.
I just put it in the chat box. I'll put his Twitter handle in there as well. Jamie, thank you so much for the time. I know you're a busy dude, so we appreciate you coming on with us and enlightening us today. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.